Thumbelina by Lucy Pack. There once was a woman who wished for a little girl. She grew older and older, but her wish seemed like it would never come true, until one evening when she was visited by a fairy with magic seeds. The woman planted the magic seeds in a flower pot just before drifting off to sleep. She dreamed dreams of days spent with a daughter of her very own. When the woman woke, a tulip-like flower had grown up from the magic seeds. The woman thought the flower was so beautiful that she bent down to kiss its petals. Just as she did, the flower blossomed. Sitting inside was a girl so tiny she could sit on the woman's thumb, and so she was named Thumbelina. The woman built Thumbelina a walnut shell bed with flower petal bedding. To keep her busy in the day, Thumbelina had a teacup boat with grass oars to sail around a mixing bowl pond. Thumbelina slept so soundly from sailing all day that when one night a toad hopped into her room, she didn't even wake. The toad looked at sleeping Thumbelina and thought, "How beautiful she is! She would make a perfect bride for my son." So the toad put the walnut shell bed, Thumbelina and all, into her pocket and hopped home. The toad was ugly, but even uglier was the swamp she lived in, and ugliest of all was the toad's son, who always did just as his mother said. The toads took still sleeping Thumbelina out to a lily pad in the middle of the pond, while the mother explained to her son that his bride-to-be must rest there while they prepared the house for the wedding. Luckily, a family of fish overheard the toad's conversation, so when Thumbelina woke crying, they told her how she got to the middle of a pond and of their plan to take her far, far away from the toads. Thumbelina sailed for days and days on her lily pad boat, pushed by the fish family, until one night a storm came and tossed Thumbelina onto land. She wandered alone, crying because everything reminded her of the loving home the toad took her from. Eventually, Thumbelina came across a cottage, and desperate, she knocked on the door. A friendly mouse answered and invited Thumbelina inside. When Thumbelina told the mouse of her horrible adventures, the mouse offered to clothe, feed, and house Thumbelina in exchange for doing a few chores. One day, the mouse invited her friend, the mole, over for tea. The mole fell deeply in love with Thumbelina and asked to take her on a picnic in the woods. Thumbelina agreed, even though she did not love the mole the way he loved her. As Thumbelina and the mole walked through the trees, they came across a weak and wounded sparrow. The mole tapped the sparrow with his foot and said, "That will teach him to fly around in the sky instead of roaming the ground like us." Thumbelina was so disgusted with the mole's cruelty that she ran back to the mouse's house, now positive she did not love the mole, and hoping for some way to escape. Thumbelina gathered some food and supplies to bring to the weak sparrow. The sparrow was so grateful for Thumbelina's kindness that he offered to take Thumbelina with him when he migrated for the spring. So, Thumbelina and the sparrow came up with a plan. The sparrow flew over a beautiful garden and gently placed Thumbelina in a blossom where the king of the flower fairies was living. The king of the flower fairies fell deeply in love with Thumbelina, just as the mole had. But the king was such a kind-hearted soul that Thumbelina fell deeply in love with him too, and eventually became queen of the flower fairies. The end.